still talking on the economy and state of the nation, but very interesting conversation we have had backstage. Just as you've seen there, I'm now being joined by Mr. Lanre Issa Onilu, who is the former National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, and Mr. Mark Jacobs, who is former National Legal Advisor of the PDP and also former Attorney General of Kaduna State. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I do not know if you heard part of what our second guest, Mr. Segun Sani, who is the chief economist of Refineries, talked about, but he did mention something about a paradox. The fact that this is the time where we should be basking in the high price of crude, but that is not happening. As a matter of fact, it's the first time, according to him, that we're having high prices and, we're having low revenue. And for a number of people, it's really mind-boggling. I think not just for them, but also for even people like our governors. Only recently, I think the parts of the conversation which they had with the president recently came out, and some 35 recommendations or so, all of them pointing to the fact that something drastic and urgent needs to be done about the economy. I do not know what you have seen in recent times, but I'd like to, ask you, let me start with you, Mr. Jacobs, about your take on our current state of affairs.
Personally, Nigeria is on a dangerous brink. I fear every day I wake up, I just continue to wonder, how will this day be? Because one, the level of insecurity makes nonsense of any economic policy. You can't, in good conscience, in good faith, say that Nigeria is okay. Anybody alive in this country, walking in the streets of Nigeria, knows that Nigeria is not the same. Things are not working. The insecurity has graduated to the level that I just read a report by Punch this morning, which said that within the last 18 months, 800 soldiers have been killed by terrorists. 800. In a country where we have a paucity of personnel to man our security, 800 have been killed. Many other hundreds injured. And so, for me, all the economic policies that anybody can talk about melt into nothingness when you juxtapose them with the level of insecurity. And I think that should be the talking point in the mouth of any Nigerian. The governors, I heard some of the recommendations, and I asked myself, why now? There have been governors for 8 years or 7 years, and it is in the last 6 months or 8 months or to the end of their tenure that they are bringing 35 recommendations to the presidency. It doesn't make sense. These are things that ought to have been developed, debated, interrogated at the commencement of their tenures. And I find it very strange that it is at the wee hours of their tenure that they are bringing these things up. And for me, it's just beating about the bush.
It's not a case of better late than never?
No, they know they can't implement any of those things because most of them are already in the campaign trail. They are too busy to even implement. Assuming the presidency wants to implement these things they have recommended, they won't have the time because they are busy. Many of them are already campaigning for their next election.
Well, Mr. Onilu, I do not know, what your take will be on it. I do know that when the government of President Muhammadu Buhari started in 2015, Nigeria really was in dire straits at that point in time. Prices of crude had crashed, not very much left in our savings, etc., etc. But things have since improved since that time. I mean, there was a lot of talk, and maybe even work around diversifying the economy, and then we saw that, agriculture, started to contribute quite a bit to the GDP. But what we're seeing now is a complete surprise, because some people were thinking that the moment the price of oil improves, all of these other efforts, should be boosted and it should result in some boom. But that has been the complete opposite. What precisely has gone wrong by your own assessment?
Yeah, well, I thank you very much. I think, you started right by saying Nigeria didn't start in 2015. We've had a lot of challenges even before this government came into place. As you rightly noted, the revenue was completely down. Oil prices hovering around $30, $40 per barrel. And so we came in with that challenge. The state of insecurity was no better. It is just the type of insecurity, if I may put it that way. What we had before was the entire Northeast almost taken off this country, by Boko Haram element and ISWAP. And now that has gone down almost completely to zero. We now have a new type of insecurity. I mean, the banditry, kidnappers, and all this stuff that are spread all over the country and have actually spread our security architecture so thin that they are barely coping as part of all the effort of the government. Then that is not helped by a lot of challenges that have come globally, not just Nigeria. As the oil prices started improving and we're supposed to reap the benefit of that, you had the coronavirus that shut down the world for nearly 18 months when nothing practically was happening. You couldn't even do business, not to talk of generating revenue. People were completely locked down. Businesses were shut down. And we came out of that mid-2021 and we're just trying to pick up, not Nigeria, I'm talking globally. So the challenges are there for the entire world. But that will be that peculiar situation, country to country. In Nigeria, we have our own peculiar situations. We have, for instance, the issue of insecurity that is said. You may not find banditry in Ghana, you may not find it in the US, but they have their own challenges. But the issue of economy, the inflation rate that is, going through the roof, that is common, across the world. I think what we should be asking ourselves is, what is the government doing about all of this? Is the government responding to this in any way? And if the government is responding, what are the reasons why we are not seeing enough, to justify whatever effort that is going into that?
So while one can appreciate the fact that, there are global challenges and that, there is no isolated environment because, there is talk about globalization. Yeah. However, ours is quite peculiar because we seem to be the only oil-producing country that is in some distress as we speak. And it would seem that our problems are self-inflicted. For instance, you talked about insecurity and how the crisis has since left the Northeast. It's all over the Northwest, which is our food basin. North Central, it's making it impossible for people to farm. And then there is, apart from the fact that people are unable to go to the farms, there is the general distrust and insecurity, which, ill will, which is just breeding amongst the citizenry. So when we look at our own peculiar situation, don't you think that our own problems are more self-inflicted than what is actually happening around the world?
Absolutely. Nobody can deny that. Whatever we are having today, I would say 70% self-inflicted. And that goes to the fact that we're supposed to have 4 oil refineries. And we had a government under a political party that ran for 16 years. And not one of these refineries came back on stream. And we are into the 8th year of this government. As I speak to you, by early 2023, the Port Harcourt refinery will be back on stream, producing initially at about 60,000 per barrel a day.
Yeah, but don't you think that that's part of the dilly-dallying? Because initially, I remember that, the first Minister of State for Petroleum, Ibeka Chukwu, was pretty optimistic about how we're going to sell the refineries. And then much later, we're told, oh, no, they're not going to sell it anymore. And there was a lot of emphasis on the private sector refinery, which was coming up, the Dangote refinery. There were talks that by 2019, at the latest, it was going to be ready. And I think there was a lot of hopes hung on that particular refinery. This is 2022, is yet to come on stream, despite all that we've seen, even though we're optimistic about the Port Harcourt refinery. Don't you think that the dilly-dallying, the uncertainty about what a government wanted to do and go about it also caused part of why we're here?
I won't call it dilly-dallying. I would say uncertainties that are beyond human control. For instance, you talked about Dangote Refinery that ought to be on stream by 2019. You have to take about 1.5 years of coronavirus out of that. And by the time you had that...
Coronavirus was 2020.
Yeah, that spill into it. You get the point. And the Dangote Refinery is not operating just in Nigeria. There are global implications to whatever that refinery is doing. And so whatever is happening elsewhere also affects us. You speak about the prices of food now that is going up, that is the inflation. You know what is happening in Ukraine, Russia has implications to whatever is happening in Nigeria in terms of prices of food, in terms of the price of bread, because there's no wheat, which the world, about 18% of wheat comes from that axis. And it's not coming to the rest of the world. And then so it's up. So that's effect from one area to the other. So it's not an isolated case. But what is important for us to note is that even to provide that environment for the private sector to do that humongous, economic activity that is going to bail us out from having to take our crude outside of this country, which we did over 16 years of PDP. And now we are not going to do that again from first quarter of 2023. We're going to be refining enough for our own local consumption and even for export. And by the time that is taken off, you're soon going to have the Port Harcourt come on stream. And so we're going to have sufficiency in refined products in Nigeria.
There will still be questions as to what we're going to do with the subsidy. I mean, I'm looking at the recommendations of the governors. I'm trying to see if I can quickly open that particular page where it is. And, part of their concerns is the amount of money we're spending on subsidies, between 5 to 7 trillion naira on subsidies and under recovery. And they're wondering whether the federal government cannot, do something about it, asking the federal government to end it. Let me see if this is it. That's it on the screen as well. They want in fact, it is number 1 on their list. Eliminate PMS subsidy and under recovery, 6 to 7 trillion naira. Eliminate NNPC's federation-funded project, 300 billion. Cap social investment program, national poverty reduction with growth strategy budgets to 200 billion. Eliminate extra constitutional deductions from FAC. I think one of them that is also, they're divided into different parts. There's part A, part B, part C. That's how they amounted to 35. And I'm going to jump quickly to number 8. It says, offer federal civil servants above 50 years, a one-off retirement package to exit the service and employ lower cost, more ICT compliant youths and women graduates. I don't know why they think women, should earn less. Women should actually take objection to that. But that's their recommendation. Maybe they think that, the man will always earn more.
This is election year.
Yes.
So politicians normally will make recommendations that will appeal to voters. It has nothing to do with improving the economy.
Is that appealing to voters? Because
yes.
I hear that civil servants are up in arms with that.
Of course. No, but you see, when they now touch women and youths, it's votes gathering.
No, but look at the context.
It's vote targeted. And
look at the context in which they have talked about this.
Yes.
Employ lower cost, more ICT compliant youths and women. In other words, they're going to be paid less.
Less than other people.
Than the regular civil servants.
Well, look, I don't think that's what they're talking about.
Just a moment. Let him give me his own reading.
Is that these are politicians. Like it or not, they know the things that are bothering Nigerians. They know. They know that India system, like governors have SAs, SSAs, PAs to SAs. a long list.
You're once in government,
Yes,
so you
so
know.
I know. I didn't see any recommendation in that list where they say they should streamline their baggage. Their long list of unproductive personnel that they go around with. They didn't mention the number of vehicles they travel with. You see a governor coming into this town from Ekiti or from Abia. He has 25 vehicles on the convoy. And they come and close down Sheraton or Transcorp with all that number at the expense of the state. Nobody is mentioning those critical activities. And most of these governors...
That hasn't changed. Some governors will say, oh, we've since cut down on that. I mean, I travel with how many people? Maybe 2 or 3 people.
We see them in Abuja here. They cause a lot of traffic problems when they come. When they have meetings, we see them. And some of them even relocate to Abuja and stay here permanently until it is time to collect FAC. They go back, arrange salaries, collect their security vote. They didn't mention anything about removing this big money they collect as security vote. Now, these are politicians that they are trying to talk to the gallery to win sympathy from those who are supposed to give votes. We know them. We've been part of them, and we are still with them. So they are not sincere in these matters. And let me go back a little bit to the issues of the refineries. Honestly, I pity my friends in the APC when they start talking about 16 years. It's an old song that has gone stale, and it is no longer sellable. Look, in 2014, the documents are there. The television recordings are there where the APC promised 1 refinery every 2 years. That they will build a refinery every year in Nigeria. They didn't say they are going to revitalize the refineries. So it's actually a situation where people came into power via populist propaganda. Then they came in and they realized that those things they were talking about are not realizable. You should apologize to Nigerians. Look, we promised this. We can't do it because either the funds are not there or look, you can't build a refinery in 2 years. But they promised that in each year.
It depends on what kind of refinery.
No.
Some people have talked about modular refineries.
Okay, let's assume that that is what they meant. Where are they?
Big question.
No. So, and we're at the end of the tenure. And they want to go back to the 16 years of, for God's sake, let's stop this kind of talk. 16 years, yes, that has come and gone. Everybody in Nigeria knows what happened in 16 years. At least Nigeria was competing favorably in the world. We had the fastest growing economy in Africa. Today, Nigeria is the headquarters of poverty. And you want to talk about 16 years? I was in government.
Let me take this conversation. Yes. Let me take this conversation to my colleagues in Lagos.
Yeah, Mr. Lilu, good morning. Good to see you. Speaking about some of what the country is going through and the promises that this government has made, and looking at where we are today and what would have happened if perhaps certain things might have been done. In March 2016, precisely, the president, he was speaking at a banquet at the Villa. No, it was actually at the National Economic Council. So this was titled Nigerian State Multi-Centers of Prosperity. And he said, let me quote him now, Nigerians' favorite talking point and is built on jokes is the power situation in our country. But ladies and gentlemen, it is no longer a laughing matter. We must, and by the grace of God, we will put things right. In the next 3 years left for this administration, we have given ourselves the target of 10,000 megawatts distributable power. Today, we haven't seen any of that.
Yeah, I agree with you that that has not happened. But I will also say, my friend here just said we should not discuss what happened in 16 years, because this government came on board in 2015, hoping that the privatization that happened in the power sector that led to having discos and all the rest will have taken care of that stage of reform in the power sector. But it turned out that we were put in a very difficult situation by the kind of agreement that PDP signed with those people who had nothing to do with power sector, who had no knowledge and no investment to put into the power sector, and they parceled the various distribution units to those people. Just about 2-3 months now, this government is struggling to come out of that agreement. A kind of, Nigeria was chained, let me put it in that way. We were chained down by the agreement PDP signed with this discourse. We were supposed to put certain amount of money into the sector, and they have refused to do that. Ordinary metering, for them to produce meter so that people will not be billed, estimated billing would be taken out of our system. That didn't happen. Up to now, we don't have meters in several homes, millions of homes. They are paying estimated billings. So I'm sure you know that in the last 2 months, this government finally, and there's still that fight back from these same people, finally this government is trying to take these things away, and the banks who gave out the money are taking the companies away from them, and then we are going to now go back to what ought to have happened some 10 years ago. We are going back to it now in 2022. That is the sad reality. So nobody could have envisaged that some people will sit down and pursue distribution companies and give to their friends and cronies and themselves, chain down the country to an agreement that is not profitable to us, that will not generate power, that will not distribute power. But notwithstanding,
you can hear me right now. Just 1 second. On the issue that you just raised, the question Chamberlain asked you, I think is very, very direct. He's quoting a presidential statement from March 2016. And at that time, the president said, in the next 3 years.
Yes, yes.
Now, this is like what, 6 years after. So going back to quoting 16 years, when the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, with all executive powers, made a promise of 3 years, don't you think it's somewhat quoting 16 years?
Could you just hold on? March 2015, you're referring to a president-elect, not a president that was
2016, serving. Not 2014.
Who had no access.
It was 2016, not 2014. He was president from 2015.
Yes, you said 2015 March.
2016.
And that was just barely after election.
Mr. Izonilu, it was 2016. It was the following year. 16, not 15.
Okay, 2016.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Are you hearing me now?
We can hear you, go ahead.
As of 2016, the government is barely 1 year old. Nobody knew that we are in such a situation that we will not be able to assess these companies and do anything about them because of the kind of agreement that were signed on behalf of the federal government by the PDP government. And it took this far for government to be able to wriggle out of this agreement. And if the government was not determined, we will not even get to where we are today. We will not be able to even wriggle out for another 20 years. And what we should be interrogating is for Channel TV, for instance, to help Nigerians to bring up the agreement that PDP signed with these companies. What were the terms of the agreement? Did the terms also encourage the federal government from being able to take action? And that was what happened. It is not possible for government to have gone against those agreements because the penalty that has been put there with the clauses are going to be huge and very damaging to our economy. So now, the last 2 years, finally, government is getting a hold on it. And now those distribution companies have been taken over from the people who for 7, 8, 9 years have not put 1 naira investment into these distribution companies. And that's the problem we have. Because it's not about generation. Even if when you generate power today in this country, 10,000 megawatts, 15,000, you cannot distribute it. We don't have the network to distribute power because those companies could not do what they were supposed to do based on the terms of agreement, but yet there are clauses there that say federal government couldn't or shouldn't take those companies away from them. And that was the problem we face as a country. And I think Nigerians should rise up to really interrogate that. The media should interrogate that, bring up the agreement, what were the terms, why would anybody sign those on behalf of this country? And why would anybody put Nigeria in this kind of situation?
I do know that, Mr. Mark Jacobs is a lawyer, and the first Minister of Power, Works and Housing was, the first Minister of Power, Works and Housing was also a lawyer as well.
Yes.
So when he looked at, under the Buhari administration, when he looked at the agreement, he said that, look, it was only better for Nigeria to follow the terms of the agreement, otherwise we risked a reputational, it was more reputational than anything else in terms of challenging what had been signed, because it says if a country starts to go back on what it has signed, then a lot of people will start to question what sort of country that is. But let me come to you, sir. I know you are itching to respond to a few of the things that he's raised. This is where we currently are. I do not want to talk about the last 15 years, and we can talk about the last 7.5 years of this government. But we're looking forward right now. We know that as a country, we are in dire straits. If we do nothing, we cannot expect to continue doing the same thing and expecting different results. If we do nothing, we're not looking at a very good end, so to speak. And I don't think anybody wants Nigeria to end. That's not what we're looking at. What we're looking at is solutions. This is the time when our political parties will be bringing their ideas to the table. I think we're approaching that season where they begin to canvass for votes once more. But generally speaking, when you look at where we currently are, what task, if you think that 6 months or how many more months now is too short for the president to do anything, some people will disagree, because we still have to live through the campaign season to the next electoral cycle. So what do you think he should be doing now? Should he really be paying attention to what the governors have written down in their recommendations? Because this cuts across bipartisan lines. We understand 33 governors recommended this.
Let me start by saying that, look, we need to get serious. And our leaders, particularly the people in charge of government at the center, must get serious about this country. You cannot continue to pass the buck. Look, this country has been messed up, totally, and there is no apology for that. The question asked from Lagos was on generation of power. The presidency promised in 2016 to generate a certain megawatt. It's not about distribution. These cores and the rest, they are in charge of distribution. But generation is the question that was asked. There has been no increase of even 1 megawatt from what it was in 2015. And that is a betrayal of trust. That is a complete, total failure on the credibility of politicians.
That might not be completely correct.
It's completely wrong.
No, that's not completely. In terms of generation, there's been some improvement. But in terms of...
You have 3,350 megawatts from Mambila Plateau.
No, just a moment, sir.
Under this government?
I'll let you respond, but
yes.
I do know that we've gotten up to 7,500 megawatts in terms of generation. But it has never made it to the transmission line, and it has never made it to distribution.
Now,
so generation, I do know that there's been some improvement there.
It took us from 2015 to now to wriggle out. I'm a lawyer, and I know in every agreement, bilateral or whatever, there is a clause for pulling out. And if this is the reason why government couldn't deliver on its promises, the first thing is to terminate. There is nothing about
to terminate the agreement.
The agreements, yes.
Okay, okay.
Once you
so
have,
this is your perspective as a lawyer.
Certainly.
Okay, so
as a layman,
apart from electricity generation right now, which you are saying we should, I mean, the government of the day can terminate. What else would you be recommending that government does at this point?
In terms of electricity,
revenue, we have a revenue problem. We have been told right now our revenue is just enough to service. In fact, I think our debt servicing is more than the revenue which we're currently getting. That is an alarming situation.
There are very simple things that this government is doing that are just crazy. Look, you can't be telling me that you are doing school feeding and the children are at home and billions of naira are going into that project. Who is in charge of this camp? And nobody is questioning them. Under this government, you have one person stealing not 800 naira, not 8 million naira, but 80 billion times 2. In this government.
Accusation is different from, you know, being proven guilty.
EFCC doesn't go to court.
It's important for us to make that dichotomy.
I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
But you see, the figures that they keep bandying are also embedded in what the operators of the government are doing.
We're totally out of time,
Completely
sir.
Completely terrible.
Okay. We're totally out of time.
And they are not talking about those things. Nobody has been.
So let me quickly let Mr. Onilu respond in 30 seconds if you can, because we're totally out of time.
As a lawyer, he said we could have just terminated, and I'm surprised that a lawyer would say that. As a layman, I would say you have to also ask what is the cost of termination. Have you seen the agreement? Do you know what the implication of terminating?
I have seen.
And what did they say?
They are just,
Nigeria will have paid heavily. Just as
you noted,
not just in reputation, we will have paid heavily in terms of money that we are supposed to pay off.
Yes.
It's crazy. That is one. Two, what this governor said has nothing to do with politics. I'm not happy that we didn't focus on that. What the governors are actually recommending will hurt APC if we were to implement them. Because taking subsidy off will compound the problem of poverty. It will mean that people will be paying.
There was nothing like
it will mean people will be paying like 400 naira, 500 naira a liter. And you say that is politics?
Well, this is coming from a government that did not believe in
subsidy. They said there was no subsidy.
Yeah, that's a different matter. We can address that. But for him to say that, no, it's not possible. It is not politics, it is economy.
Gentlemen, we have one more segment to still take on Sunrise Daily. I really have to, I mean, I wish we could continue, but we have to go. I have to thank you both for coming on. Mr. Lanre Issa Onilu is former National Publicity Secretary of the APC, and Mr. Mark Jacobs is a former National Legal Advisor of the PDP and also former Attorney General of Kaduna State. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you so much.
Well, we'll take a break at this point, and we'll have one more segment talking about international relations this time around. Please stay with us.